The alarm woke Admiral Park Do-hyun from a dream about his daughter's wedding. He had not slept well in 30 years, not since the Mars uprising took his left eye and gave him nightmares that never faded. But tonight the alarm was real, and the cold feeling in his stomach told him something was very wrong. He reached the bridge of Sentinel Prime in 4 minutes. The orbital defense station hung above Earth like a metal moon, bristling with weapons that could turn asteroids into dust. Commander Yoon Hana was already there, her face lit by the blue glow of sensor screens. She did not look afraid. She never looked afraid. But her hands were gripping the console so hard, her knuckles had turned white. "Show me," Do-hyun said. Hana touched the button. The main screen filled with light. At first Do-hyun thought it was stars. Then he realized the lights were moving. They were ships. Thousands of them. More ships than humanity had ever built in its entire history, pouring out of a hole in space at the edge of the solar system. 12,000 vessels, Hana said. Her voice was steady but quiet. They appeared 6 minutes ago. Fold space technology. Far beyond anything we have. Do-hyun stared at the screen. He had spent his whole life preparing for this moment. Every admiral before him had prepared for it too. Since humanity first looked up at the stars, they'd wondered if something was looking back. Now they had their answer. Have they made contact? He asked. One transmission. Audio only. Playing now. The voice that filled the bridge was not human. It sounded like rocks grinding together, translated by some kind of computer into words humans could understand. The message was short and simple. Primitive species of the third planet. You have been selected for integration into the Varth Dominion. You will surrender your world, your resources, and your population. Resistance will result in extinction. You have one planetary rotation to comply. This is not a negotiation. The message ended. The bridge was silent, except for the hum of machines. Do-hyun looked at his officers. Some were young, fresh from the academy. Others were veterans like him, scarred by battles against other humans. None of them spoke. "Sir," Hana said finally, "what do we do?" Do-hyun walked to the window. Earth hung below, blue and green and beautiful. His daughter lived down there. His grandchildren. 8 billion people who had no idea that everything was about to change. He thought about human history. The wars, the famines, the plagues, the nuclear weapons that almost ended everything. Humanity had spent 10,000 years learning how to kill. They had gotten very, very good at it. Then they had stopped fighting each other, built a united world, and pointed all that knowledge at the stars, just in case. "Contact Earth Command," Do-hyun said. "Tell them to wake up Secretary General Beak and activate the defense grid." "All of it?" Hana asked. "All of it. Every satellite, every missile, every ship, everything we have." Hana hesitated. "Sir, that will take everything out of hiding. They will see what we have. They will know." Do-hyun smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Good. Let them know. Let them see exactly what they are dealing with." The next hours were chaos. Military commanders around the world received the same alert. Submarines rose from ocean depths. Mountain bases opened their doors. Weapons that had been hidden for generations came online for the first time. On the Varth flagship, High Emissary Torvak watched the human response with mild interest. He had done this hundreds of times on hundreds of worlds. The pattern was always the same. First came fear. Then came desperate messages begging for mercy. Then came surrender. Then came integration. The humans would be no different. They were primitive. They had not even colonized their own solar system properly. They had no fold space technology, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. By Dominion standards, they were barely above animals. "Emissary," one of his officers said, "we are detecting unusual activity on the planet's surface and in orbit." "Unusual how?" "They appear to be activating weapons systems." "Many weapons systems." "More than our initial scan showed." Torvik made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Of course they are posturing. All primitives do this. It means nothing. They have never faced a real military force. They will learn." But as the hours passed, even Torvik began to feel something strange. The humans did not send messages begging for mercy. They did not offer to negotiate. Instead, they simply prepared. Ships moved into formation. Ground forces deployed. And the weapons kept appearing. More and more weapons. Far more than should exist on a world this primitive. Admiral Dunn stood on the bridge of Sentinel Prime and watched his fleet assemble. 200 warships. Not many compared to 12,000. But each one was built by a species that had spent its entire existence fighting. Each one carried weapons designed by the most creative killers the galaxy had ever produced. Hana appeared beside him. "The Secretary General is preparing her response. She wants to meet with their emissary." "Of course she does," Do-hyun said. "Jisoo always wants to talk first. Do you think talking will help?" Do-hyun turned to look at her. His artificial eye gleamed in the low light. "No, but it will give them one chance to leave. One chance to understand what they are facing. After that," he shrugged, "after that, we do what humans have always done." "What is that, sir?" "We fight. We die if we have to. But we never, ever surrender." He looked back at the stars, at the thousands of enemy ships waiting in the darkness. "They think our history of war makes us weak. They think because we fought each other, we are divided, broken, easy prey." He smiled again, and this time there was something fierce in it. Something ancient. Something that had kept humanity alive through ice ages and plagues and wars that burned whole continents. They have no idea what they just walked into. The Vorus shuttle landed in Neo-Sol on a gray morning. Rain fell from heavy clouds, and the streets had been emptied by military order. High Emissary Torvik stepped onto human soil for the first time and looked around with disappointment. He had expected something more impressive from a species capital. Instead, he saw simple buildings, wet pavement, and soldiers in strange metal suits watching him with flat eyes. Secretary General Baek Jisoo waited inside the Unity Hall. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and a scar on her jaw from a knife fight 20 years ago. Before she became a diplomat, she had been a soldier. Before she was a soldier, she had grown up in the slums of Old Bizen, fighting for food. Nothing about the alien walking through her doors scared her. She had faced worse. Torvik entered with 4 guards. Each guard stood 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor that looked like stone. Their eyes were black and empty. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Jisoo did not stand. She simply gestured to a chair across the table. "Sit." Torvik paused. In 40 years of conquest, no primitive had ever spoken to him like that. He decided to find it amusing. These creatures would learn respect soon enough. He sat. His guards stood behind him like statues. "You received our terms," Torvik said. His translator made his voice sound almost human. "I am here to accept your surrender and discuss the integration process. The Dominion is not cruel. Those who submit peacefully are treated well. Your species can have a good future serving us." Jisoo listened. Her face showed nothing. When Torvik finished, she slid a tablet across the table. "Those are our terms," she said. Torvik looked at the tablet. He read the words twice because he was sure he had misunderstood. Then he made a choking sound that might have been laughter. "You want us to leave? You want the Varith Dominion, which has conquered 47 star systems. To retreat from this single planet because you ask nicely? We are not asking nicely, Jisoo said. We are telling you. Leave our system within 72 hours or face war. Torvik leaned forward. He was not laughing anymore. You have no concept of what you face. We have destroyed civilizations that had space travel while your ancestors lived in caves. We have crushed species with technology 1,000 years beyond yours. What could you possibly do against us? Jisoo pressed a button on the table. The wall behind her lit up with images. Ships in orbit around Earth. Missile silos hidden under mountains. Weapons platforms floating in the asteroid belt. Nuclear warheads. Antimatter bombs. Kinetic weapons that could punch through moons. We call this the defense grid, Jisoo said. We started building it 3 generations ago, before we had proof that aliens existed, before we had any reason except fear and preparation. She stood and walked to the screen. You want to know what we could do against you? Let me tell you a story. 100 years ago, humans fought each other with weapons that could end all life on this planet. We came within minutes of destroying ourselves. Twice. We had to learn to stop fighting, or we would have gone extinct. She turned to face Torvik. But we did not forget how to fight. We did not destroy our weapons. We did not become soft. Instead, we looked up at the stars and asked ourselves a question. What if something comes? What if something bigger and stronger and more advanced than us decides to take what we have? Jisoo smiled. It was not a friendly smile. So we prepared. Every nation. Every government. For 100 years, we have been building, waiting, training, not because we wanted war, because we knew that someday someone like you would come. Torvik stared at her. For the first time in his long career, he felt something unfamiliar. Not fear exactly. Not fear exactly. More like uncertainty. These creatures were supposed to be terrified. They were supposed to beg. Instead, this small woman with gray hair was threatening him. You are bluffing, he said. Your weapons cannot match ours. Your ships are primitive. You have no shields, no fold space drives, no plasma technology. You are right, Jisoo agreed. We do not have those things. But we have something else. Something you have never faced before. And what is that? Experience. Jisoo sat back down. Your dominion has conquered hundreds of species. How many of them fought back? How many of them had spent their entire history at war? How many of them had already survived weapons capable of destroying their own world? Torvik did not answer. None of them, Jisoo said. They were peaceful species, scientists, explorers. They saw your fleet, and they surrendered because they did not know how to fight. They had never learned. She leaned forward. We are not like them. We are a species born in blood, raised in war. We have killed more of our own kind than most civilizations have members. And every lesson we learned, we kept. Every weapon we built, we improved. She gestured at the screen behind her. You see that fleet in orbit? Those ships were designed by the descendants of people who built nuclear bombs and nerve gas and biological weapons. People who turned killing into a science. People who found new ways to destroy each other for 10,000 years. Jisoo stood again. Her voice was quiet but hard as iron. So here is my question, emissary. In all your conquests, have you ever faced a species like that? Have you ever fought creatures who smile at the thought of war? Who sing while they march into battle? Who would rather die than surrender? Torvik said nothing. Leave, Jisoo said. Take your fleet and go home. Tell your masters that this planet is not worth the cost. Because if you stay, if you force us to fight, we will show you exactly what humans are capable of. And I promise you, emissary, You will not like what you see." The meeting ended in silence. Torvak returned to his shuttle without another word. His guards followed, their black eyes revealing nothing. But as the shuttle rose through the gray clouds, Torvak looked down at the planet below and felt that strange uncertainty again. He pushed it away. They were primitives. Nothing more. The Dominion had never lost a conquest. They would not start now, but somewhere deep in his mind, a small voice whispered a question he could not ignore. What if she was telling the truth? The Vorath attacked at sunrise. They expected the fight to be quick. They expected the humans to scatter and flee. They expected what they had always seen on every other world. Easy victory. Total surrender. Simple conquest. They were wrong. Captain Lee Sunwoo had been hiding in Jupiter's shadow for 3 days. His ship, the Indomitable, was old by human standards. 20 years of service. Hull scarred by battles against pirates and rebels. But she was fast, she was tough, and her crew had been training for this moment their entire lives. Enemy Vanguard approaching, his weapons officer reported. 300 ships. Heavy cruisers and destroyers. Sunwoo watched the sensor display. The Vorath ships moved in a simple formation, spreading out like a net to catch prey. They did not expect resistance. They did not even have their shields raised. "Signal the 4th Fleet," Sunwoo said. "All ships. Attack Patma Mega. Fire at will." 50 human destroyers burst from hiding at the same moment. They came from behind asteroids, from inside gas clouds, from places the Vorath had not thought to look. The first volley was railgun slugs, traveling at 15% of the speed of light. Simple metal rods, no explosives, no fancy technology. Just mass and velocity. The slugs hit the Vorath ships before they could react. Without shields, the cruisers had no defense. Metal punched through hulls like needles through paper. Reactors exploded. Ships broke apart in silence. Sunwoo felt the Indomitable shake as she fired again and again. Nuclear-pumped lasers joined the attack, cutting through enemy armor. Missiles followed, swarms of them, overwhelming point defense systems that had never faced this kind of assault. The Vorath commander finally understood what was happening. He screamed orders. Shields went up. Ships turned to face the threat. But by then, 40 cruisers were already dead, and the humans were not stopping. On Earth, the ground invasion began an hour later. Vorath landing craft descended through the atmosphere, burning through clouds and dropping troops on every continent. They expected scared civilians. They expected weak resistance. They expected easy targets. Major Choi Yoonji was waiting for them. She commanded the 7th Armored Division. Stationed in the mountains north of Seoul, her soldiers wore powered exoskeletons that made them faster and stronger than normal humans. Her tanks carried railguns that could punch through Vorath armor. And her soldiers had been trained from birth to fight. "Here they come," her sergeant said, watching the sky fill with enemy craft. Unji raised her rifle. It was an old weapon, passed down from her grandmother, who had fought in the last great human war. The metal was scratched and worn, but it still fired true. "Remember what we are fighting for," she told her troops through the radio. "Remember your families, your homes. Remember that these invaders think we are weak, think we are prey." She smiled beneath her helmet. "Let us show them how wrong they are." The first Vorath soldiers landed in a valley 3 kilometers away. They were tall, covered in natural armor, carrying plasma rifles that could melt steel. They moved forward confidently, expecting no real opposition. Yoonji let them get close. Then she gave the order, "Fire." The mountains erupted. Artillery shells rained down from hidden positions. Missiles streaked from underground bunkers. Drones descended from the clouds, carrying explosives. And through it all, human soldiers charged forward, screaming battle cries in a dozen languages. The Vorath had never seen anything like it. Other species ran from them. Other species hid. These creatures attacked. They attacked when they were outnumbered. They attacked when they were dying. They attacked with guns, with grenades, with knives, with their bare hands, if that was all they had left. Yunji led the charge herself. Her exoskeleton absorbed hits that should have killed her. Her rifle ran empty, and she picked up a fallen soldier's weapon and kept firing. When that ran empty too, she drew her knife and kept fighting. Around her, soldiers fell. Good soldiers, friends. But for every human that died, 3 Vorath died with them. And the humans did not stop. They did not retreat. They just kept coming, wave after wave, singing old songs their ancestors had sung in wars long forgotten. The Vorath ground commander watched in horror. His troops were the finest warriors in the Dominion. They had conquered 100 worlds. But they were falling back, actually retreating. From primitives. What are they? He asked his aide. What kind of creatures fight like this? His aide had no answer. In orbit. The battle was going no better. Admiral Park Do-hyun had moved Sentinel Prime into the front lines, using the massive station as a shield for smaller ships. His weapons crews fired until their guns overheated, then fired more. When one gun failed, they switched to another. When a section of the station was destroyed, the survivors moved to another section and kept fighting. Commander Yoon Hana led a squadron of attack craft against the Vorath flagship. Her pilots were young, most of them barely out of training. But they flew like veterans, diving through enemy fire, launching torpedoes, pulling away at the last second. 3 of her pilots did not pull away. Their ships were destroyed, but instead of trying to escape, they aimed their burning craft at enemy ships and kept accelerating. The explosions took out 2 Vorath cruisers. Crazy humans, the Vorath fleet commander muttered as he watched. They are insane. Maybe they were. But they were winning. By sunset on the first day, the Vorath had lost 40 ships in orbit and 12,000 soldiers on the ground. The humans had lost more, much more. But they did not care about losses. They did not count their dead and decide to surrender. Instead, they counted their dead and got angrier. Admiral Do-hyun stood on the damaged bridge of Sentinel Prime and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, more Vorath ships were coming. More battles waited. More death was certain. But they had survived the first day. They had bled the enemy. They had shown the entire galaxy that humanity would not go quietly. He smiled, blood running down his face from a cut on his forehead. One day down, he said to no one in particular, "Let us see how many they have left." Fleet Commander Vorgan had never lost a battle. In 60 years of service, he had conquered 11 worlds, crushed 14 rebellions, and killed more enemies than he could count. The Dominion gave him the difficult missions, the dangerous missions, the ones that required total destruction. He had never failed. Now he stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching reports come in from every part of the battle. And for the first time in his life, he felt doubt. The humans were not dying properly. They were dying, yes, in large numbers, but they were not breaking. Every world Vorgan had conquered followed the same pattern. Kill enough of them, and they surrendered. Destroy their armies, and they begged for mercy. It was simple mathematics. Apply enough force, and any species submitted. These creatures did not follow the mathematics. He watched footage from the ground campaign. Human soldiers charging into plasma fire without hesitation. Pilots crashing their damaged ships into Vorath formations. Civilians picking up weapons and joining the fight. An entire species that had looked at the most powerful military in the galaxy and decided to attack. "They are insane," Vorgan said. "Perhaps," his aide replied, "but effective. We have lost 63 ships and 40,000 ground troops. At this rate, We will exhaust our invasion force before we control the planet." Vorgan made a grinding sound of anger. "Then we will not invade. Signal all ships. We will burn their cities from orbit. Turn their world to glass. If they will not surrender, they will die." The order went out. The Vorath fleet began to move into bombardment formation. Plasma cannons powered up. Orbital strikes would begin in 6 hours. Earth would become a dead rock, another warning to species who dare resist the Dominion. But deep beneath the mountains of northern Japan, a woman named Shin Mai-rei was about to change everything. Mai-rei was 61 years old. She had spent 40 years as a physicist, working on problems most people could not even understand. Her hair was white, her hands shook slightly, and she had not slept in 4 days. But her mind was still sharp, and the machine in front of her was finally ready. "Project Prometheus is online," she said into her communicator. "Ready for activation on your order, Admiral." Do-hyun's voice came back, tired but determined. "What exactly will it do?" "In simple terms, it will trap them here. The Vorath use fold space technology to travel faster than light. This device disrupts that technology. When I turn it on, no ship in this system will be able to open a fold space portal. No reinforcements. No retreat. They will be stuck here with us." There was a pause. "And our ships? We do not have fold space drives. We will be unaffected." Do-hyun laughed. It was a tired, bloody laugh, but it was real. "Do it. Trap them here. Let them see what happens when they cannot run away." Mai-rei activated the device. Across the solar system, Vorath ships suddenly found their fold space engines dead. Navigators panicked. Commanders screamed for explanations. In seconds, the entire fleet realized the truth. They were trapped. Admiral Do-hyun broadcast to every human ship and soldier. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, but his voice was strong. "They came here thinking we were prey," he said. "Now they cannot leave. Now they are stuck in our system, surrounded by our weapons, facing our soldiers. Now we show them what happens when you corner a human. All forces, attack. Give them nothing. Take everything." The Battle of Earth had truly begun. For 18 days, humanity threw everything it had at the Vorath fleet. Ships that were too damaged to fly were aimed at enemy vessels and used as missiles. Stations that were about to fall launched their escape pods at enemies instead of away from them. Soldiers who ran out of ammunition charged with bayonets. Captain Lee Sung-woo died on day 7, ramming the Indomitable into a Vorath carrier to protect a transport ship full of refugees. His last words were a joke about how he had always wanted to go out with a big explosion. Major Choi Yoon-ji lost her left arm on day 12, but kept fighting for 3 more days until blood loss finally dropped her. She woke up in a hospital, asked for a prosthetic, and was back on the front lines by day 16. Dr. Shin Mai-rei worked through it all, keeping her device running, finding ways to boost its power when the Vorath tried to break through. She did not eat. She barely drank. When her assistants tried to make her rest, she told them she would rest when the aliens were dead. On day 18, Commander Yoon Hana led the final assault on the Vorath flagship. Her boarding craft punched through the hull in 12 places at once. Marines in powered armor flooded the corridors, fighting through choke points and ambush. The Vorath fought hard, but they were not used to close combat. They were used to destroying enemies from far away, not fighting hand-to-hand with creatures who seemed to enjoy it. Hana reached the bridge first. She had lost half her team getting there. Her armor was cracked, her rifle was empty, and she had 3 wounds that should have killed her. But she was still standing when the door opened, and Fleet Commander Vorgan turned to face her. He was huge, twice her size, covered in natural armor that could stop bullets. His eyes were ancient and cold. He had killed thousands of enemies with his bare hands. Hana did not hesitate. She drew her knife and attacked. The fight lasted 47 seconds. Vorgan was stronger. Vorgan was bigger. Vorgan was a warrior who had never been defeated in personal combat. But Hana was human, and humans did not fight fair. She used every dirty trick she knew. She went for eyes, for joints, for weak spots in his armor. When he grabbed her, she bit through his fingers. When he threw her across the room, she bounced off the wall and came right back. When he finally pinned her down, ready to crush her skull, she detonated a grenade she had been hiding under her armor. The explosion killed Vorgan instantly. It should have killed Hana too. But somehow, when her Marines reached the bridge 5 minutes later, she was still breathing. Barely, but breathing. She opened her eyes, looked at the Varth flag on the wall, and smiled. "Someone get me our flag," she whispered. "I want to hang it up there instead." The surrender came 3 days after Vorgan died. Without their commander, without their full space drives, without hope of reinforcement, the remaining Varth ships had no choice. One by one, they lowered their weapons and sent messages of surrender. Of the 12,000 ships that had entered the Sol system, fewer than 800 remained. The greatest military force the Dominion had sent in 2 centuries had been broken by a species that had never left its own. Solar System. High Emissary Torvak was brought before Secretary General Beek Jisu in chains. He walked slowly, his natural armor cracked and damaged, his guards stripped away. The Unity Hall was filled with human leaders from every nation, watching silently as the alien, who had demanded their surrender, now stood defeated before them. Jisu looked older than she had 3 weeks ago. They all looked older. The battle had cost humanity dearly. Millions dead. Cities destroyed. Ships lost. Families broken. The price of survival had been terrible, but they had survived. "Emissary Torvak," Jisu said. 3 weeks ago, you told me that resistance would result in extinction. You told me that the Dominion had never lost a conquest. You told me that we had no concept of what we faced. She stood and walked toward him. Despite her age, despite her exhaustion, her steps were strong and steady. "I think it is time we discuss new terms." The treaty negotiations lasted 2 weeks. Humanity did not ask for much. They did not want Vorath territory. They did not want Vorath slaves. They simply wanted to be left alone. They wanted a promise that no Dominion fleet would ever enter their system again. They got that promise. The Vorath were desperate to get it. They would have given almost anything to escape this nightmare. When the last Vorath ship limped away through a fold space portal, humanity finally allowed itself to celebrate. There were parades in every city, memorials for the dead, ceremonies honoring the heroes who had saved their world. Admiral Park Do-yoon stood on a balcony in Neo-Seoul, watching fireworks light up the sky. He had refused to attend the official celebrations. He said he was too tired. The truth was that he could not stop thinking about everyone who had not survived. All the good people who would never see this moment. Commander Yoon Hana found him there, leaning against the railing, staring at nothing. She was still recovering from her wounds. Her left arm was in a sling, and she walked with a slight limp. But she was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. "You should be celebrating," she said. "So should you." They stood together in silence for a while, watching the colors explode across the sky. "Do you think they will come back?" Hana asked finally. "The Vorath? Or someone else?" Do-hyun nodded slowly. "Yes, someday. Maybe not the Vorath. Maybe someone worse. The galaxy knows we exist now. They know what we did. Some will fear us. Some will want revenge. Some will just want to prove they are stronger than the empire we defeated. Then we will fight them too." Diane smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. Yes, we will. Because that is what we do. That is what we have always done. 1 month later, Secretary General Beek Jesu addressed the galaxy. Her message was broadcast on every frequency the Varth had used, sent out into space in every direction. She knew that hundreds of species would receive it. Species that had been conquered by the Dominion. Species that had surrendered without a fight. Species that had never known anything except submission. She wanted them to know something different was possible. My name is Beek Jesu, and I speak for the people of Earth, she began. 3 months ago, the Varth Dominion came to our world. They expected us to surrender. They expected us to submit. They expected us to be like every other species they had conquered, weak and frightened and easy to control. She paused, letting her words carry across the void. They were wrong. We are humanity. We are a species born in conflict, raised in war. We have spent our entire existence fighting for survival, against nature, against each other, against anything that threatened our home. We are not civilized the way other species are civilized. We are not peaceful the way other species are peaceful. We are survivors, fighters, predators dressed as prey. The Varth came to take our world. We took their fleet instead. Behind her, images appeared on the screen. The wreckage of Varth ships. Human soldiers raising flags over conquered enemy positions. The moment of surrender. We do not seek war, Jesu continued. We have had enough of war. We have killed more of our own kind than most species have members. We know the cost of conflict better than anyone in this galaxy. We do not want to fight. Her voice hardened. But make no mistake. If any power, any empire, any force in this universe threatens our home, our people, our future, we will show them the same thing we showed the Varth. We will show them what happens when you threaten a species that spent 10,000 years learning how to kill. We will remind them why even we were afraid of ourselves. Jesu looked directly into the camera. Her eyes were cold and ancient, the eyes of a species that had stared into the abyss and made the abyss look away. The Dominion called us primitive. They called us weak. They thought our history of violence was a flaw. She smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf showing its teeth. They did not understand. Our violence was never a flaw. It was training, preparation, 10,000 years of practice for exactly this moment. We are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not submit. We do not die quietly. Come at us if you dare. But know this. Every species that has ever threatened us has learned the same lesson. Humans bite back. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, on worlds that had been conquered and worlds that had never known freedom, beings of every shape and form watched the message in silence. And for the first time in millennia, the galaxy felt something new. Not fear of the Dominion, fear of the small blue world that had just broken it. Fear of humanity.